A mother of 5 has died. Fox 2's Lauren Edwards is live tonight in Bloomfield Hills with the latest on this. I mean, just hearing the circumstances, Lauren, it's chilling.
Absolutely. Hillary, I can tell you that law enforcement and police are continuing to investigate this fatal shooting. First, the mom's body was found, and then the man's body was found in this area of Square Lake Road and Telegraph, where I'm standing right now. But take a look at some of the pictures that family was able to share with us. Again, absolutely tragic what happened. You are looking at photographs of 33-year-old Latrice Harper. Fox 2 met with that family, I'd say less than an hour ago, and the family tells us that Harper was a beloved friend, sister, daughter, and mother of 5.
On a quiet street in Pontiac, Michigan, where porch lights glow soft against the evening air and neighbors settle into their nightly routines, a moment of unimaginable heartbreak was unfolding, one that no one saw coming. Inside a modest home on South Marshall Street, a life that had survived 10 years of love, stress, reconciliation, and raising a family together was about to end in silence. Latrice Shauna Harper had spent the day the way she always did, moving between being a mother, a partner, and a woman trying to keep life steady for the 5 children who depended on her. Friends would later describe her smile as a warm invitation, the kind that made you feel like everything would be okay. For her kids, she was the safe place they always returned to. What no one knew, not her family, not her neighbors, not the 5 children who adored her, was that this night would become the last time her home would feel whole. Around 7:30 p.m., her stepdaughter walked through the door expecting the ordinary. Maybe a quiet evening, maybe a routine conversation, maybe the familiar hum of a home winding down for the night. What awaited her instead would change the course of an entire family and leave a community in shock. Moments later, just miles away, along Square Lake Road near Telegraph, headlights illuminated a parked vehicle. Inside sat a man who had been part of Latrice's life for nearly a decade, a man who had shared a home with her, shared responsibilities, shared dreams. The rifle resting nearby, the stillness inside the vehicle, the faint glow from the dashboard, all of it suggested a tragedy that had been set in motion minutes before. By the time emergency responders arrived, nothing could be reversed. The couple's relationship, once built on 10 years of memories, had ended in a devastating sequence of loss. And while the details would soon reach the public, what happened inside that home before everything unraveled remains locked behind silence. But the aftermath, that part was impossible to hide. 5 children, ages 4 to 15, suddenly without a mother, and soon without a father. A stepdaughter traumatized by the discovery no child should ever witness. A community that would ask question after question, looking for signs, answers, anything that might explain how a long-term relationship collapsed so violently. The Oakland County Sheriff would later stand before cameras and speak words that echoed the pain many felt. It breaks my heart when relationships turn violent. If you're in an abusive one, get help. In homes across Michigan, and soon across the internet, people repeated the same stunned whisper. How could this happen? And why? Tonight, we peel back the layers of the life Latrice lived, the warning signs the world missed, and the final hours that turned a decade of partnership into one of the most heartbreaking stories Pontiac has seen in years. This is the story of Latrice Shauna Harper, a mother, a partner, and a woman whose life ended in a way no one could have imagined. Welcome to Lat True Crime Stories. I am your host. Today we are breaking down one of the most twisted cases you've ever seen. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and leave your comment to tell us where you're watching from. Let's build this community together. Now let's get into it. In the months leading up to that October evening, life in the Harper household looked, from the outside, like any other long-term relationship, trying to keep moving forward despite life's pressures. Neighbors often saw Latrice on the porch with one of her younger children balanced on her hip, her voice soft and reassuring as she guided them through their afternoon routines. She was the type of mother whose presence alone offered comfort. Her children gravitated toward her warmth, finding in her the steady encouragement they needed. Her partner of nearly 10 years, Jeremy Smith, was known in the neighborhood too, quiet, reserved, sometimes tense, but rarely outwardly confrontational. Together, they had endured the challenges that come with a decade-long relationship, financial stress, emotional strain, repeated attempts to rebuild trust, and moments when cracks in their partnership became visible to those closest to them. But despite all the fragile moments, there were long stretches where they kept trying for the children and for the life they had built. Inside their home on South Marshall Street, the rhythms of a blended family played out. School mornings, late-night homework, quick meals between work shifts, and the constant shuffle of responsibilities. Some nights were peaceful, others tense. But Latrice pushed through every day with a quiet determination that made her loved ones admire her strength even more. Friends would later describe her as the glue. She held things together even when she was exhausted, even when the emotional weight of the relationship became harder to carry. There were times she confided in a friend, moments where she admitted she wished things were different, that the relationship felt heavy, that the arguments were draining, that she longed for more peace than conflict. But like many who stay out of hope or obligation, she pushed forward. People close to her noticed shifts over time. Some said the couple seemed disconnected. Others said tension had become more frequent. Tiny fractures that had once healed quickly began to linger. The two had lived in the same house, but sometimes seemed to be walking different emotional paths. Still, no one could have predicted the ending. As fall settled into Michigan, the Harper home was preparing for the cold season ahead. The older children were adjusting to school routines, while the younger ones enjoyed the last mild evenings of the year. To them, their mother was the constant, the one who made their world feel anchored. And to many of her friends, Latrice had been making small comments that hinted she wanted change, peace, and a future with less emotional tension. On the morning of October 30th, nothing seemed unusually alarming. The day unfolded with the typical movement of a working household. The kids left for school, meals were prepared, and the normal flow of domestic life moved without outward disruption. Latrice appeared calm, in her usual rhythm, caring for the little ones while organizing the home. But beneath the surface, something unseen had been escalating. Something emotional, something fragile, something dangerous. The history between her and her partner, the years of strain, the unresolved arguments, the silence that lingered after certain disagreements, these invisible layers were building into something that neither she nor the children could have fully recognized. No one around her knew what had been said behind closed doors that day. No one heard the tone of conversations, or the quiet moments that may have carried tension. But people who experience emotional turmoil often move through their final hours, unaware that a line is about to be crossed.
Bloomfield Hills, with the latest on this, I mean, just hearing the circumstances more, and it's chilling.
Absolutely. Hillary, I can tell you that law enforcement and police are continuing to investigate this fatal shooting. First, the mom's body was found, and then the man's body was found in this area of Square Lake Road and Telegraph, where I'm standing right now. But take a look at some of the pictures that family was able to share with us. Again, absolutely tragic what happened. You are looking at photographs of 33-year-old Latrice Harper. Fox 2 met with that family, I'd say less than an hour ago, and the family tells us that Harper was a beloved friend, sister, daughter, and mother of 5. The Oakland County Sheriff's Office says Thursday night Harper was found dead in her home in Pontiac. 15 minutes later, Bloomfield Township police were sent to the area of Square Lake Road near Telegraph, and where Harper's boyfriend at the time, whom she had 3 kids with, 41-year-old Clifford Terrell Noel Jr., his body was found slumped over in a vehicle from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, they say. But again, family and friends of the victim, the loved ones, all of them tell us they are absolutely in shock.
She was amazing, beautiful person, loved her family, her kids. She was just amazing. She was amazing, beautiful person, loved her family, her kids. She was just amazing.
Now, loved ones tell us that they didn't know about any sort of domestic violence, but we do at Fox 2 want to remind anyone that if you are struggling with this, or if you're in a domestic violent relationship, the hotline, the National Domestic Violence Hotline number, which is 1-800-799-7233, is available 24/7, again, for anyone who is struggling with this. And coming up later tonight, you'll hear more from the family and just how they're keeping her legacy alive. Reporting live here in Bloomfield Hills, Lauren Edwards, Fox 2 News.
The moment when her stepdaughter, someone who had grown up under Latrice's care for a decade, approached the home expecting nothing more than the comfort of familiarity. She was a teenager who had relied on Latrice for guidance, for safety, for maternal support during so many formative moments. What she walked into wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the end of a life that had anchored 5 children, a family, and a community. She could not have known that the walk up those porch steps, the turning of the doorknob, and the seconds that followed would forever divide her world into a before and an after. In the home that had been busy with laughter, arguments, meals, and memories, an irreversible decision had already been made. It was a moment that would echo through every life connected to Latrice, especially through her children, whose young hearts would be forced to grapple with a loss they were far too young to understand. Meanwhile, the man she had spent 10 years with, a man she once trusted, had already driven away. The silence inside the car was heavy, the weight of the rifle beside him signaling a finality he had chosen before anyone could intervene. By the time the police received the call, by the time emergency responders arrived, and by the time the stepdaughter's shock turned into a cry for help, the tragedy had already set itself into the timeline of that day. A day that began quietly, with the mundane normalcy of life, had turned into something devastating in the span of minutes. Outside, the neighborhood remained unaware. Porch lights glowed. Cars passed by. Leaves rustled across lawns. Life continued its usual rhythm until the news spread, and disbelief swept through the community. The Harper home, once filled with the energy of a large family, now stood as the site of a tragedy no one saw coming. In this storm of loss, 5 children were suddenly left with a void too deep to articulate. A family that had tried for 10 years to hold itself together fell apart in an instant, and the community, stunned and grieving, waited for answers that would come slowly, painfully, and with emotional weight that lingered long after the scene was cleared. The morning after Latrice's stepdaughter discovered her mother on the couch, the world seemed to tilt. Investigators from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office descended on the home, signs of tragedy still fresh in the air. The single gunshot wound to Latrice's head raised a crucial question immediately. Was this not just a tragic accident, but something much darker, a deliberate act? Minutes later, officers responded to a separate but linked scene. A car parked near Square Lake Road and Telegraph, where Latrice's longtime partner, Clifford Torrell Cliff Noel Jr., lay slumped behind the wheel. With him was an AR-style rifle, and the evidence was chilling. A self-inflicted wound sealed a final, terrible moment. Turn 0 search 1, turn 0 search 5, turn 0 search 4. According to authorities, the two had been together for roughly a decade, and detectives believe an argument had escalated into this catastrophe. Turn 0 search 2. The fact that the couple had shared so much, a home, a family, years of life, made the violence even more shocking. As the investigation deepened, conflicting emotions and painful truths began to emerge. Many in their community wondered what could have pushed 2 people who had stayed together for so long to such a breaking point. Friends described their relationship as complicated, not always smooth, but rooted in care, shared responsibility, and family. But pain sometimes lives in silence, and for Latrice and Cliff, the day-to-day tensions may have boiled over in a way no one anticipated. Investigators questioned whether this was a sudden escalation or something more insidious. Was there a pattern of emotional volatility? Had her children ever witnessed moments of fear, or had their home become emotionally unsafe? While the official public reports do not yet reveal a history of abuse, the intensity of the outcome suggests something deeply broken inside that relationship. Meanwhile, the detection of the couple's 5 children, ranging in ages from 4 to 15, added another urgent layer to the conflict. The children were not in the house when the tragedy struck. They were later discovered in a motel in Rochester Hills, safe but terrified, relocated by Child Protective Services. Turn 0 search 1. The fact that they were absent during the violence brought both relief and concern. How had they ended up there? Who made the call to separate them from home in that moment? No easy answers were offered publicly, but the implications for their emotional future weighed heavily on everyone watching. The sheriff, Michael Bouchard, summed up the community's anguish in his statement. "It breaks my heart when relationships turn violent." Those words echoed beyond the badge. They were a plea for awareness, a warning about the hidden damage that intimate relationships can carry when pain is buried instead of addressed. Turn Zero Search 3. As the investigation progressed, detectives grappled with evidence, the timing between the two deaths, the location of the rifle, the trajectory of the gunshot, and the call to law enforcement. They sought to understand not just what happened, but why. Was this a moment of desperate rage? A planned final decision? Or a tragic breakdown where love and fear collided with fatal consequences? Meanwhile, in the older rooms of the Harper home, the conflict played out as something more than physical violence. It was emotional, it was relational, and it was devastating. A lifetime built together unraveling in one bleak night. For Latrice's family, the public investigation felt like an emotional battlefield. They watched as the details emerged, but still feared that the full truth might never emerge. Arguments, suspicions, love, and regret tangled together. The memory of a caring mother and the horror of how she died seemed impossible to hold in the same breath. For the children, the conflict was more than a news story. It was their reality. The young ones who spent years playing in their mom's lap now faced a life turned upside down. Their siblings, teenagers themselves, had to process the discovery of a parent in a way no child should. Their homes would never be the same. Their hearts might never fully heal. Yet, as the investigation unfolded, a broader conversation began in their community about domestic violence, about mental health, about the danger that sometimes hides behind smiles and day-to-day routines. Crisis counselors and advocates stepped forward, urging anyone feeling trapped to seek help. The sheriff's warning grew into a call to action. Relationships deserve more than silence. They need space for care, truth, and mutual respect. Through all the conflict, personal, legal, internal, one painful truth settled in. A decade of love had ended in a night of violence, and 5 children had lost the person they called mom. The threads of that relationship, once interwoven with hope and family, had snapped under pressure. Latrice's death would not be forgotten. Her story would demand a look deeper, not just into what happened, but into how love can become dangerous when fear and despair take root. And as investigators worked to piece together the final moments, her family, her children, and her community braced for what comes next. Clarity, closure, or more questions. The final hours, the pain that remains, and the message we cannot ignore. The climax of this tragedy does not arrive with flashing lights or dramatic confrontations. It reveals itself quietly, in the aftermath, when the truth of what happened can no longer be escaped. As detectives continued reviewing evidence from both scenes, the timeline became heartbreakingly clear. Sometime between the evening tension and the early morning hours, the argument inside that suburban home escalated beyond words. Whatever was said, whatever emotion surged, whatever had been buried for years, they all met their breaking point. And in a single, irreversible moment, Latrice Shauna Harper was shot. It wasn't cinematic. It wasn't loud. It was the kind of moment where silence becomes terrifying. And then, hours later, in that parked vehicle near Square Lake Road and Telegraph, Clifford Noel Jr. made his final decision. Investigators found the AR-style rifle. They confirmed a self-inflicted wound. The chain of events had ended where despair replaced reason, and a decade-long relationship with shared memories, shared responsibilities, and 5 children dissolved into tragedy. But the real climax, the true emotional breaking point, came afterward. Not for the investigators, not for the public, but for the children. 5 young lives, ages 4 to 15, suddenly without their mother, without their father, and without the security of home. They were found later in a motel in Rochester Hills, confused, terrified, and thrust into a reality they never chose. Child Protective Services stepped in, but protection doesn't erase heartbreak. Safety does not replace family. Guidance cannot heal what innocence has suffered. In the days that followed, the sheriff's office held firm to the evidence. The phrase apparent murder-suicide landed heavily in every news report, words that carried finality even for those still searching for emotional clarity. Sheriff Bouchard's voice lingered in community memory. It breaks my heart when relationships turn violent. That sentence became the emotional coda of the investigation. But for Latrice's family, closure was complicated. Her siblings, relatives, and friends grappled with a bitter truth. They would never hear her voice again, never see her at family gatherings, never watch her children run to embrace her. Their grief demanded answers, but investigations can only explain actions, not the emotional storms that lead to them. Some questioned whether signs had been missed. Others wondered if the relationship had frayed long before this night. And many reflected on how easily love can mask unresolved pain. For the community, this case became a mirror, a forced confrontation with issues often avoided: domestic tension, emotional health, and the silence people hold in long-term partnerships when fear or frustration grows unchecked. The conflict was no longer just about the night of the tragedy. It was about what had led there, and what must change so another family does not endure the same fate. The funeral services for Latrice carried an atmosphere of devastation. Her children, held close by relatives, experienced something few hearts that young should ever carry. Elders in the family spoke about her warmth, her laughter, her love for her children. Others acknowledged the complexity of relationships, how even those that last years can reach emotional breaking points unknown to the outside world. There would be no courtroom days, no trial, no opportunity for testimony, justice, or apology, because the one responsible was gone, and that left an irreconcilable silence, the kind that forces families to heal without answers, communities to reflect without closure, and advocates to speak louder about the importance of recognizing emotional deterioration before it turns dangerous. In Oakland County, the ripple effects continued. Domestic violence advocates used this tragedy to remind the public of warning signs, resources, and support systems. Community groups held discussions on mental well-being, relationship stress, and conflict resolution. While nothing could bring Latrice back, her story became a catalyst, a somber reminder that tragedies like this do not happen in isolation. For the children, long-term support plans began taking shape. Therapy, schooling adjustments, and grief counseling were arranged. Relatives stepped forward to create stability. Their future will always carry the weight of what happened, but with guidance and love, there is hope they can carve new paths forward. And now, as we close this story, we return to the one reality that echoes through every corner of it. This did not have to happen. Latrice deserved safety. Her children deserved peace. And the community deserves the reminder that emotional struggles inside relationships cannot be ignored. Latrice Shana Harper's story is more than a headline. It's a reminder of how fragile human relationships can be, how years of shared life can unravel in a single night when hurt goes unspoken and emotions turn volatile. If you or someone you know feels trapped, unheard, unsafe, or overwhelmed inside a relationship, please seek help. Speak to someone. Call a hotline. Reach out to a friend, a neighbor, a counselor. Silence protects no one. Latrice's story is heartbreaking, but by telling it, we honor her life, and we raise awareness for others who still have time to choose safety, to seek support, to step into a better tomorrow. If this story moved you, please don't leave quietly. Share this video. Someone out there may need this message more than you realize. Like the video so YouTube pushes the story to more people. Comment below to honor Latrice or to share resources others might need. And subscribe for more real stories that reveal the truth behind tragedies. Stories that matter. Stories that might save lives. Latrice Shana Harper will not be forgotten. And today, by watching and sharing her story, you help make sure her voice lives on.